Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Sacred Womb podcast, where we talk about all things to do with befriending our menstrual cycle, deeply healing both our feminine and masculine aspects, and how we can indeed utilise our cyclical nature as a natural spiritual pathway that's encoded within our bodies. I'm your host, Melanie Swan, and you can also go to thesacredwomb.com for more information and loads of fantastic free resources. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Womb podcast. I've got a massive treat for us today. Bethany Webster is back on the podcast talking about when no contact with our mother is the healthiest option. I love Bethany's work. She talks about things in the mother wound, to do with the mother wound, about healing the mother wound, that, this work isn't done by anybody else that I know of. And it's fantastic what she does. And she's got a course, and I know a lot of women are really healing from that. So I'm really happy to have Bethany back on. If you've not listened to her previous 2 episodes, go back and listen to them because they form a foundation for this one. The first one is what is the mother wound? And the second episode is on the parentified daughter. So if you've not listened to them, I've put the link in the show notes for you so you can go back. They're really popular episodes in this podcast, and I know a lot of women have got a lot of juicy and helpful information from them. So anyway, I'm very happy Bethany is back with us, and I've specifically asked her to talk about this particular topic so that we can get this podcast out around the holiday season, because not all of us want to spend time with our families, and sometimes it's just not the healthiest choice. Sometimes the healthiest choice really is to have no contact, and that might seem scary and it's not talked about very much. So I thought we'd get that blog post brought to life, and Bethany really does that for us. So anyway, without further ado, here's Bethany, and I'll see you the other side. Welcome back, Bethany.
Thank you, Melanie. It's great to be here.
Okie dokie, let's get started with this one then. So today we're talking about your article, Navigating No Contact When Estrangement from Your Mother is the Healthiest Choice. A juicy one for the holidays, hey?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I'll start off with how you start the article and let you go from there. So the decision to go no contact with a family member is a deeply personal one. Over to you.
Yes. The decision to go no contact is, for many people, a long journey precedes that decision. As children, we are, built to connect with our parents, with our mothers especially. And so for those of us, that, myself included, that have had to make that really difficult choice, it can be a long journey of trying to make it work, trying to, explain, persuade, create a connection. And there's a lot of things in our culture that say, as women, we have to make it work. Relationships are our purview, and we have to accommodate, and we have to, make that work, make relationships work. And also, at the same time, our culture tells us that women, in our families are the keepers of secrets. We are the ones that are supposed to be silent about abuse or about neglect. We are supposed to suppress, keep the peace. And many of us do this in many different ways. Like, we can become the good girl, which is a pattern that I had, or we can become the rebel, or we can, there's a lot of different ways we can cope with that. But, we start out with this desire to connect with our families, and it can be one of the hardest things ever. And it was the hardest thing for me ever, I would say, to make that decision to go no contact. And the way it happened for me, and I think the way it happens for many people, is that something happens. It starts out with dysfunction and abuse that has a cost. And you start to become more aware of the cost of these dysfunctional interactions with family members and with your mother. And the more healed you become, it's like the more intolerable, the more awful it is to have these interactions. And you begin to see how, it's easy to talk about these kind of things with people who aren't our mothers or our family members. But when you start to see how our mothers or family members are invested in not understanding us, invested in seeing us as less than, some of these passing down some really dysfunctional, abusive situations, and how they're not going to change. So it's like there's a crossroads where many come to where it's like, well, it's me or them. Like, am I going to spend the rest of my life enduring this abuse and trauma, or am I going to choose myself? And it's not true for everyone. Some mothers can change, some can grow, but for many mothers late in life, it's not going to happen. It's not, it takes two to make a respectful relationship. So in some ways, I think women who go through this situation, actually, it can be the hardest thing, and it can be the most empowering thing. It can be the culmination of, really an action of self-love. It can be one of the most empowering things in your life when you realize that you have so much self-worth and you're so healthy that your family system can't accommodate you in an empowered state. That's how I saw it, is that, families are kind of like systems, and they seek equilibrium. They seek equilibrium and stasis. So when someone in the family becomes, heals themselves, gets support, gets awarenesses that other people in the family don't, they can become an outsider. They can become harder to fit in the family. And some people, are like, what's wrong with me? Everyone else, in my family seems to be okay with this, but I'm not. Well, sometimes it's because you're the healthiest person in the room. You're the healthiest person there. So, but over time, as you start to get more confidence, more support, more tools, it starts to become intolerable to be in that place. And so it's a process, it's a process of getting there, and support is so important. Because the truth is, you don't have to tolerate abuse from anyone, even your mother, even anyone else in your family. You don't have to tolerate that. And I think there's something about right now, culturally, that we are getting that. Previous generations used to think, well, keeping the family together is the most important thing. Staying together, taking the high road, shoving all this abusive behavior under the rug, whether it was addictions, domestic violence, child abuse, you name it. Generations of people have thought, well, that we don't talk about that. And if we don't talk about it, it goes away. Well, where's a way? There's no away, right? So I think we are lucky in the sense that we're alive right now at a time when people are seeing through that illusion of suppression. The thing in my family was kind of like suppress it and move on. Like if something happens and it's not working out, just move on. Like, can you forget it? And the thing is, the more self-worth you have, the more you cannot forget it. It's not possible. And that's a sign of growth. And that's something I want people to hear today, that if you are in a position of needing to estrange yourself or create distance for however long, or even in a final way, whatever the case may be, it can be a real sign of health. It can be a sign of, being at a certain point in your journey where you're no longer willing to tolerate that stuff. So I really believe I have a real place in my heart for women who have to make this choice. And I have a real empathy for how hard it is to get here. And also what a true opportunity for empowerment that it can be as well.
Absolutely. It certainly was for me. I'm in the same position.
Really? Are you?
Yeah. So you're talking about this, it comes a point where just a decision comes from within. It's not that I made the decision or thought about it. It just came like, I do not have to do this anymore. This person is not changing. And the biggest relief I got, my mum actually, she's great in some ways. She gave me the opportunity. She said, well, you either shut up or bugger off.
Wow.
and I said, well, I'll bugger off. Then I put the phone down. It was great. She gave me the perfect opportunity. And that was it. And I the biggest thing I got was, I'm all right. Do you know what? I'm grieving, but I'm all right. And that was so fantastic to realize, like, I'm not 4, I'm not 6, I'm not 11 standing at the top of my drive. Shit, I'm an adult. Oh, yeah. Holy shit, I'm an adult. And then I started to have much more fun, actually. It was very, very freeing. But just that, it was like it was a split-second decision. Either shut up about this, stop challenging me, or go away. And in one breath, I feel like I empowered myself. It was fantastic. It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
I can get the feeling of it now talking to you. Like, but it was great for me. But what I found was my friends were challenged by that. Just my action of empowerment. And I would get questions, but she's your mum. And it was only triggering their fear. And I had enough awareness to be okay with that and talk to them about it. And we kind of worked through it. We fumbled through it. But I just wondered if you could talk a little about kind of coping with the challenges that come often from those closest to us when we do make that really freaking tough decision to choose our authenticity over our connection with our mums. And if you've got any insight and tips, that would be great.
I'm happy to. Yeah, I have so many insights and tips. This is a really important subject. I'm really glad we're talking about it. People around you will be triggered for sure. This is still taboo, people still elevate our moms to kind of what our culture does, which is like moms are next to God. They can never be questioned. They are always right. Or the other side, which is our moms get blamed for everything and they get disrespected and they struggle and they're unacknowledged, So there's these two extremes. There's no place for us as women to deal with our authentic feelings with our moms. And so there's blame either way. You're either like, you're not respecting your mom or you're like blaming her like everyone else, and so it's normal. The thing is though, because this is so common, you got to find your people who do get it, even if it's one person, and limit your contact with those who are shaming, who are questioning, because really all that shaming and questioning is their stuff. It's their own kind of mother wound stuff happening. So it is going to trigger people, your decision. And I really see that as an opportunity to really, kind of put your roots in the ground and really be like, no, this is for me. This is my choice. And this is, those people don't know your situation, even as close as they might be, they don't know the inner workings of your dynamic. So really, I think it's an opportunity to really stand with yourself, even when people don't get it, because there's a certain kind of delicious freedom in that. And get support from people who do get it on your rough days, find people who get it and who can reflect that back to you. One of the things I did for one of my clients that really helped her with her decision was she created a folder with a lot of evidence of why this was the best decision for her. And she would go back to that when she had rough days. And you will have rough days, So for example, one day she was telling me that she was starting to feel self-doubt, like maybe I didn't give them a chance. It had been a while. It had been like 6 months. And she's like, maybe they've changed. It's kind of like the little girl inside of her was like, maybe there's a chance again, because she was feeling better. She was feeling stronger as a result of the distance. But there was still a little bit of hope that kind of popped up. But then she was saying she came across in one of her emails, this email her mother had sent her like a year before. And it was awful. I mean, it was the most toxic toxic email she had ever seen. And she was like, whoa, she hadn't looked at it in like a year. And she was like, oh my God, that is so awful. It really just it was a mirror for what had happened. So that helped her. So she printed out the email and she put it in, I said, put it in the folder so that you can really look at that regularly and affirm, make a list of all the reasons why this is the best decision for you, why this is an act of self-love, why you don't deserve to be treated that way. Remind yourself of all the drama and all the, the costs of what you went through, and put that all in one place. And that seemed to really help her kind of create that new groove in her life where she was like, yeah, this is who I am now. This is actually a place where I can have deep respect for myself and my integrity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's something that can help as well. I wanted to mention something else. And this is something that I've seen on my journey, that the grieving doesn't necessarily end, so there's going to be times when you're like, maybe around the holidays, maybe around your birthday. For me, it happens whenever I meet a new milestone. So like, if I just blast through a goal and it's just like, oh my God, this is so great. It's awesome on one level, but then my inner child is also like, but there's no one here to share it with, and my family. So there's always a predictable kind of drop, and I know it comes. I know it's coming. And so over time, I've learned to anticipate it and kind of celebrate myself in a new way that my family was never capable of celebrating, and kind of filling that gap for the inner child so that it starts to be more of a filling in and a celebration, instead of this thing that's like, oh, this thing. But really embracing your grief. Grief is not a sign that you've done anything wrong. It's not a sign that you're bad. It's not a sign that you're not healed. It's a sign that you're a loving human being and, that this is a big loss. And it's kind of like you want to deal with it like, not like, when am I going to get over it? But more like, this is a devotional practice, with every layer that shows up of sadness, grief, disappointment, old fears arising. It's just, you just got to welcome that next layer and digest it and work through it. Because something else I've found, through watching myself over these years, that there's always a predictable like soaring that happens after I allow myself to kind of drop into the grief and just let it be okay, like embrace it and soothe myself through it. And again, realizing this is still the best choice. Even though there's moments that suck, it sucks so much less than if I was still in that traumatic family situation. So allowing yourself to kind of drop into it, into that messy place. And then it always seems to result in a forward movement, a big forward movement afterwards. So kind of trusting the process and getting support from other women who have gone through this. I feel like there's kind of a special sisterhood between women that have gone through this journey of no contact. I really think, some of the most badass warrior women are women that have had to make this choice. Because think about it. Patriarchy, one of the early feminists, I think her name is Kate Millett, she just passed away this year. One of her big quotes is that one of patriarchy's biggest vehicles is the family. So one of the biggest, hardest things that we have to do is face the patriarchy in our family, that domination model, that model of power over. And so we're fighting it in the world, but it's also right there in our relationships, even with relationships with our mothers. So seeing that this whole process is really owning your power and really claiming on behalf of your lineage and the women who come after you and the women around you are all going to be affected by your claiming an integrity of your value. Because that's what it's really about. It's like, I'm not willing to be abused.
Yep. Yeah. And it has ripple effects in every other part of our lives. Once that decision's made and we can honor it, I've just found has massive ripple effects.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we can't lose what we never had. And that's another thing to remember, that the part of us that is afraid of being alone and abandoned after we say, go no contact, the fear of loss around that. And reminding yourself, and this is something I found in my journey too, like the thing I was fearing the most already happened.
Yeah.
It was something that already happened to me. The trauma, the aloneness, the abandonment. It was like the child in me was afraid that I would be unsafe and it would go through the same thing again. But it was like reassuring her that, and this is a really powerful piece of, I think, healing the mother wound and working with the inner child and mothering ourselves, is creating a bond of trust with the inner child where she can really trust that it is different now.
Yeah.
And that comes back to that inner safety, right? Like cultivating a trust, a loving relationship with that little girl that you were. And part of that is taking in the magnitude of how much you suffered, like really learning the contours of your pain and being that loving witness to it and soothing her and being with her, being the mother that you always wanted to yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's the ground. That's like the new ground that we can stand on as women that's really trustworthy. It's our own love. It's our own comfort, our own soothing, our own strength and courage. And when we get that, which is partly through grieving, as well as getting support, from other women and self-care is huge in this as well. But that's really that new solid ground we can stand on to make new choices and go beyond the horizons of what our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers did. That's what gives us that ability to do that, is when the inner child in us is like, okay, I'm down. I feel safe. I'm ready. Like, I feel safe with you. And I trust this new world that I'm in. That's not like my childhood. It's different than my past. The same dangers are no longer present.
Yeah.
So it takes time. It really takes time, but it's really worth it because it's really what changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally get that. And I'm reminded of traveling half the world on my own and going through India on my own and thinking, yeah. I was a little bit nervous, but my inner child agreed and she was like ready and said, I don't want to go back there either. So let's go.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
If we can just put the first foot forward, it's great. I would love to ask you where you stand on forgiveness of our mothers, because I think there's I've seen different messages banded about on it's only when we forgive that we're healed. I'm not really with that. And different messages about, well, she did the best she could with the tools she'd got, And personally, I feel none of that. I feel it's just something that's in the background that happens very organically as I move forward. But that's my experience, and I'd love to hear your experience and take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important point. I agree with you. I think forgiveness is not necessary to heal. I believe that forgiveness is the result. To be real, to be like real forgiveness, it has to be a byproduct of an authentic process. I think let's just forgive and forget, or you need to forgive to heal. That's like a little tendril of that belief of like, if we just put it away, it actually goes away. I've talked to so many women who are like, I've tried to forgive and it still comes up. And it's like, yeah, because forgiveness isn't real unless you've actually gone through the process of, working through it. And usually forgiveness is just a form of acceptance and a form of like really being at peace with yourself. And I can tell you on my journey, like, I was feeling that pressure, to forgive. And instead I was like, you know what? I'm just going to let myself stay in anger as long as I want, damn it. Because, what happened to me wasn't okay. And I'm going to take my time and just like play in anger a bit and like stretch out in it and see what's here. And I'm so glad I did that because it really helped me to own my power. I began to see that the more we can allow ourselves to be angry, like be courageous enough to be enraged on our own behalf, on behalf of the child that we were, that is the degree to which we can stand firmly in our worth and make choices that fiercely, embody our value in the world. It's what makes us intolerant to future, transgressions against us. It's almost like it's that real, there's a word, I can't think of it, but anger is really what you need to go through before you can get to forgiveness. We can't just go straight to forgiveness. That's like a lazy man's work. It's not real. I mean, in the end of the day, we can try to forgive, but it just doesn't happen that way. And sometimes people get this pressure, I think, from their families, like, I said, I'm sorry, can't you forgive me? But the truth is, as women, we don't want to just hear a word, an empty phrase, and move forward, because we know that's not real. That's not substantial. That's not transformation. So I think we have to really put a stake in the integrity and what's real, not in just the surface level, because you're worth more than that.
Yep.
And I think we want relationships that are not surface level anymore. We're just not settling for that anymore.
Yeah. That's refreshing to hear. That's very refreshing to hear. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And if we can finish on one point, you made a great point there about women and anger. And I think as well as some sort of perpetuated myth that we need to forgive, I think there's also one that we shouldn't be so angry. And I've found such joy in being angry and such power. Like if something pisses me off, it's telling me something. Something is not okay. Either I've acted out of integrity or somebody else has, or something's not right here. And it's okay for me to use my voice and use my energy in this situation. So, thank you for bringing that. Could you talk a little bit more about that if we got time?
Anger is the key. And I really believe right now we need to support each other in feeling our anger. We can't look to men or to the institutions and structures to give us permission, because they have all benefited. They exist by the virtue of our silence. So our anger is the key to everything moving forward, the key to ourselves, our love of our bodies, our love of each other, the earth, all hinges on our ability to be enraged. We need to be enraged.
Great.
Yeah.
And on that note, I feel so energized talking to you about this. On that note, I know your power's about to cut. Thank you so much. I'll put all the links in the show notes and links to your websites. And I believe you've got a book coming out at some point.
Yes, it's in process. I'm looking for the perfect situation, taking my time and finding the right home for it so that it reaches millions of women who need it. So I'm really excited about it. You will definitely hear about it when it comes out.
Okay, I'll hear about it. I'll pass the message on to everybody. I can't wait to read it. Thanks again, Bethany. I wish you a fantastic day.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks for the work that you're doing. It's been great to be here today.
Oh, thanks. See you later.
Okay, bye.
Wow. Once again, fantastic podcast from Bethany. And if you are thinking of going no contact with your mum and you've got lots of feelings about it and you'd love to connect with other people that have either no contact or are thinking about it, then head on over to the Sacred Womb private Facebook group. Link is in the show notes. And it's free to join and just initiate, can't even say that today, initiate a conversation with the women in there. There's nearly 1,000 women in there now. It is a safe space to support you on your journey of empowerment and connection with your womb space and journey to loving your cycle and using it as a natural pathway in your body. So that's there. That is on offer. You're not alone. I know that feeling alone was one of the things I definitely felt when I went no contact. And I could have done with some people who were also in that position to speak to. So I hope that offers you a supportive and safe space. So that's all from me. I'll be back in the new year with another gem from Bethany. I've also got April on from The Moon Is My Calendar. We'll be doing a new moon mandala. And Holly Grigspool is joining us to talk about her book, Sweetening the Pill. And she's also going to tell us about Daisy, the fertility monitor. So some great podcasts coming up. And I wish you a safe, connected, restful, whatever holiday time that you want. And I'll see you in the new year. I really hope you enjoyed the podcast and that you got some useful tips out of it that can make a genuine difference in your daily life. And if you'd love to work deeper with this stuff, then do head on over to thesacredwomb.com, where you can sign up to receive the weekly newsletter and an invite to our private Facebook group, where you can share, learn and grow with like-minded women in a safe, supported space. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do leave us a rating, and your comments are very, very welcome. And I'll see you next time.